All right, guys. So on the case or on the workbench today, we have a case that we are going to do an inspection on. This motor is going to be a 2021. We're going to send to Brad. He's over in Gig Harbor, so thanks a lot, Brad, for taking us on this little adventure. We're going to start off by looking at the main bearing webs. Okay, so when I'm doing this on the bench, I like to use a pair of Mitutoyos. We'll just pop this guy. Oops, we'll change it to millimeters. There we go. And just short of 65 millimeters. So this guy is a virgin case, never been cut. The bearing webs themselves look pretty good. You can run your fingernail across it and feel a ridge, so we will do a line bore on it, so it'll be plus 20 when we're done. But the bearing webs do look really good. There's not a lot of beat out in them at all. They're real smooth. There's no evidence of fretting on the center main bearing webs. You can see that there's not a lot of shininess to it here, so that's good. One of the things we really like to look at is this front area here where the crank pulley goes in. The line bore bar that we put through, there's a bushing that goes in here to hold the line bore bar in place. And if there's any real damage to this guy, the line bore bar can be held out of place and you wind up cutting the mains crooked or this way. We like to check out the cam bearing webs. There's not typically much damage to these things. Some of the early 40 horse cases didn't even, well actually all the early 40 horse cases didn't even have cam bearings, but we like to check these guys out, make sure there's no evidence of Crooks VW being in there. You know those guys, they're the VW shop down the street that charges you for things they don't do. They use inferior parts. They just all around cause all kinds of trouble. So we like to keep a lookout for Crooks VW. I don't see any evidence of crook being in this motor. We like to look along the edges of the main bearing webs where they pull the bearings out. You know, a lot of times you'll see screwdriver marks there from somebody digging a screwdriver to try to get the bearings out, especially on the center main bearing. Check out the insides of each of the lifter bores. Make sure there's no evidence of any wear. I don't know if you can see down in there, but the inside of the lifter bores look great on this motor. There's no evidence of any wear at all. You can see some evidence of crook being in here. If you look down inside this cam bearing web, you can see all this sealer that was in there. I actually dug a bunch of this out already. This whole lobe was full of sealer. So whoever built this motor originally went overboard with the sealer. See all that? And if you haven't followed how the oil flows through this case, it comes out of the oil pump and goes through the cam bearing webs on the 3/4 side of the case, goes around the cam bearing, and down through this hole to the lifters and out to the head. So this little passageway right here is the only way that oil gets from the 3/4 side of the case to the 1/2 side of the case. So one of the things we're going to do on this motor is the Hoover mods, and that'll take care of that. We'll actually double the size of this gallery, plus we'll drill this one out. We'll get to that in probably our next video. We also like to check the oil pump, make sure there's no evidence of any damage in the hole where the oil pump goes through. If you got any holes here or any pitting or screwdriver marks or anything, you tend to get oil that leaks out, especially on the 3/4 side of the case. But 1/2 is important as well because you don't want to suck any air in. People don't know how to take oil pumps out of these things, and so a lot of times you'll see screwdriver marks around here. Again, that's evidence that crook has been inside the case. So watch out for that. It's not the end of the world if you see that, because you can grind that out and use some aluminum putty or titanium putty or something, fill it in. But it's an indication that crook has been inside your motor. So if you see that kind of thing, take a closer look at the rest of it. Check the bottom. Make sure the thing hasn't been sitting in the dirt. The magnesium starts to deteriorate if they sit in the dirt. So check there. Check the inside of the case around the oil screen. Make sure there's no pitting. This case looks great. We do have just a little bit of pitting, but it's not bad at all. So we'll grind that out and it'll be good to go. If you do see this and it's not bad like this, grind it out, because this stuff acts like rust. It'll continue even though it's inside the motor covered with oil. So get that stuff out of there if you find any. This case looks like it probably sat in the car with oil for a while. Collected a little bit of water, and that water settled to the bottom, and so you can see right here There's some pitting going on around the edge of the screen, so check right here as well. This one, it's not terribly deep, so I think we're going to be able to just grind this one out. Sometimes it's deep enough that you've got to grind that out and have it re-welded and do some machine work to clean it all up, but I don't anticipate that with this one. So a future video will show cleaning this stuff up. Check the dowel pins. Make sure they're not oblonged. Again, if they're oblong, they can be fixed. It's just one more indication of someone putting a motor together that didn't do a very good job. If the bearings don't fit snugly enough, then that dowel pin tries to hold the bearing from spinning rather than using the compression of the case around the bearing to hold it in place. And so that's, again, an indication that crook has been inside your motor. Okay, so we've got the case together. It's not actually tightened up. So what we're going to do is check to make sure the case is not warped. So I'm just going to snug this guy up. Hand tight is all. I don't want to go any tighter than hand tight because I don't want to deform the case and make the main bearing webs actually come together. Okay, so if there's any warpage, what we're trying to do is check to see that the bearing webs themselves all touch without being forced. Okay, so to do this, I need a flashlight. Spin the case around with everything snugged but not torqued, and I'm going to look through the inside, and I shouldn't be able to see any light in between the case parting lines, both top and bottom. Bottom is typically where you're going to see the problem, but check both. See that? No light? Okay, good. And then spin it around, check the other side just so you can check everything. And you can see there's no light on anything. All three bearing webs are in good shape. So we've gone through most of the big issues on the case. The last thing we want to do is check it for cracks. Typically you're going to find cracks around number 3, so grab your propane torch. After the case is clean, you don't have any oil left on the outside, you can take the torch and just run it along the case. As you see it start to get darker like that, you're bringing all the moisture out of it. You're getting a lot of condensation. If any of that stuff starts to turn black, you get little black lines that run all over the case. What that is oil that has seeped into the magnesium, starts to get hot, and it starts to bleed out of those cracks. So you don't want to see any of that. So just run the torch all along the whole exterior of the case. Like I said, typically you're going to see it along number 3, but I like to just run it everywhere, because we have seen cracks along oil galleries and all sorts of weird places. So check all that, run it along here. So right in here is, typically we'll weld these up on the big performance motors. This one's going to be a 2021. It's not going to be a super performance motor, so we'll leave that on this case. It's actually in pretty good shape. Okay, so we'll continue to do that on the second half of the case, but this case checks out. So make sure to watch our second video. We'll go through doing the Hoover mods on this thing. If you're not familiar with that, I'll post a link in the description so that you can go read more about it. Thanks a lot for checking us out.